Welcome back to Baha'i On Air, everyone. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jane.
And we are back with another deep dive. You ready to jump in?
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited for this one.
This one's going to be, I think, a powerful one for folks. We're going to be looking at a letter from the Universal House of Justice. It's dated July 22, 2020, and it's addressed to the Bahá'ís of the United States.
Ooh, 2020. So this is right in the thick of things.
Yeah. We'll get into why this letter is so significant, but just to kind of frame it up front. The Universal House of Justice really points to this moment as a pivotal one in American history. It was a time when, the nation's conscience was really stirred up. There was a huge potential for social change, especially when it comes to racial prejudice, this ongoing issue that we grapple with.
And what's so interesting, because the letter really emphasizes that this wasn't just some random occurrence, Like this moment in time, it actually connects to this much larger narrative that the Baha'i writings talk about the destiny of the United States. And even more specifically, it ties into the mission that Abdu'l Bahá, the son of Bahá'u'lláh and the center of his covenant, specifically gave to the American Baha'ís.
Right. So for everybody listening, think of this deep dive as our exploration of the guidance that's in this letter. And we're going to be looking at it from a Baha'i perspective, obviously. And while it was written in, this specific context in 2020, the principles that it talks about are so relevant to understanding how we can apply the Baha'i teachings to the world around us, to the challenges that society faces.
Absolutely.
And also to our own personal growth.
So right off the bat, the Universal House of Justice starts by calling this moment one of historic portent.
Wow.
Yeah. What do you think when you hear that phrase, Mark?
Well, historic portent. It has this weight to it, right? It's like it points to the fact that this moment is a huge turning point, and the decisions that are made and the actions that are taken during this time, they're going to have really long-lasting consequences. And I like that they immediately connect it back to, something bigger than just that moment, that present moment. They talk about the destiny of America, which is spoken of in the Baha'i writings.
Right.
And they bring in Abdu'l Bahā's love for the American Bahá'ís,
Absolutely. And not only is it his love for them, but it's this call to sacrifice and high endeavor.
Right.
Like this wasn't just like a nice suggestion. It was like, hey, I'm asking for real commitment from you.
Right.
Like imagine if someone you really admired who has so much wisdom, if they asked something of you like that, it would be something you take seriously, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's really beautiful how the House of Justice acknowledges all the work that the Baha'i community was already doing. They mentioned that both at the national and local levels, those governing bodies, the national and local spiritual assemblies, they were seizing the opportunities both in response to the events of that time, but also through the systematic efforts of their community building work, to really contribute to the betterment of society. So it's not just a reaction, it's part of a process.
Right. And there's this beautiful prayer that they include in the letter as well.
Yes.
And it's a prayer for the American people to like grasp this moment and make the most of it to bring about consequential reform. And the prayer really calls for a society that is just, diverse and unified and one that really reflects the oneness of humanity.
Absolutely.
So it's a beautiful encapsulation of the Baha'i vision, really.
Yeah. But the letter doesn't stay in that optimistic, like, everything's a great place, right? Like it pretty quickly moves into acknowledging that progress is hard and that there's this kind of historical pattern of things moving forward, and then there being this resistance that comes,
right,
what they call countervailing processes.
Yeah, and this is something that the letter really wants us to kind of grapple with, this idea that progress is not just this straight, upward trajectory, but it's often met with resistance. And when we look back at history, we see that advancements towards racial equality, they've often been met with these forces trying to undermine that progress.
Right. And to really drive that point home, they quote Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith. He describes this path towards, unity and racial equality as a long and thorny road beset with pitfalls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's kind of a bleak picture in a way, right?
Yeah, it's a very realistic picture, I think. You know,
Right.
it helps us understand that this is not going to be easy. This is going to require a lot of effort, a lot of commitment from everyone.
Absolutely. And it also emphasizes that this effort needs to be informed by the lessons that Baha'is have learned over the years as they've been trying to apply Baha'u'llah's teachings in different aspects of life.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we can learn from those experiences and bring those lessons to bear on this issue.
Yeah. And, you know, going back to that special mission that Abdu'l Bahá gave the American Baha'ís,
Yeah.
the letter reminds them of Shoghi Effendi's words.
Yeah.
You know, that he expected the American Baha'ís to play a really decisive share in the eradication of racial prejudice from the very foundation of the nation.
Oh, wow. So it's like they have a specific part to play.
Yes. A very significant responsibility
Yeah.
to contribute to this effort. And by extension, all Baha'is do.
Absolutely. And as the letter moves into outlining the guiding principles, you know, they make it very clear that these principles are rooted in the writings of Abdu'l Bahá and Shoghi Effendi.
Mm.
Like, these aren't just some new ideas. They're grounded in the foundation of the faith, right? It's so fascinating how the letter connects these core teachings to the ongoing work of the Baha'i community, you know, through these series of plans, global plans that the Baha'is been working on for decades now. You know, things like building vibrant communities, engaging in social action, contributing to meaningful conversations in society. And they're saying, look, these aren't just separate things, they're all interconnected, and they all draw on these timeless principles that are at the heart of the Baha'i teachings.
Yeah. And I think one of the most insightful parts of the letter is the emphasis on Baha'u'llah's central principle, which is the oneness of humanity.
Yes.
And the letter really urges all of us, you know, to reflect deeply on this principle and to really think about what it means in practice. You know, what are the demanding implications it has for our thoughts and our actions? If we truly believe that we are all one, that we are all leaves of one tree, how does that change the way we interact with others? How does that change the way we see the world?
And it's not enough to just say it, right? You know, like, I believe in the oneness of humanity. It's like, okay, but what does that actually mean? What does that look like in your life?
Exactly. It's not just this theoretical concept. It requires this fundamental shift in how we view ourselves and how we view others.
Yeah.
And the letter, you know, brings in one of my favorite quotes from The Guardian, where he refers to the American Baha'i community as the leaven destined to leaven the whole.
I love that.
Such a powerful image, right?
Powerful. What does that make you think of when you hear that?
Well, it's like, you know, you're baking bread and you put in just a tiny bit of yeast, you know, this leaven, and that tiny bit of yeast has the power to transform the entire loaf of bread.
Yeah.
It makes the whole thing rise. And so it's this idea that the Baha'i community, you know, while it's relatively small, it has the potential to have this huge positive influence on society.
It's a real image of transformation.
Yeah. But, you know, immediately after that quote, the letter brings in this really crucial reminder. It says that this community can't expect to escape the trials with which this nation is confronted, nor claim to be wholly immune from the evils that stain its character.
Right. So it's not like you get to just be in your little bubble and pretend like everything's fine.
Yeah.
Like, you are a part of society.
Yeah.
And you're going to be affected by those things. And actually you have a responsibility to address them.
Yeah. And then the letter just gets so direct, and it says, a tremendous effort is required by both races if their outlook, their manners and conduct are to reflect in this darkened age the spirit and teachings of the faith of Baha'u'lláh. And so it's placing this responsibility on everyone.
Right.
You know, it's not just one group's responsibility.
It's a collective effort. Yeah. And the next part, I think, really emphasizes that. They say, let neither think that the solution of so vast a problem is a matter that exclusively concerns the other. Let neither think that such a problem can either easily or immediately be resolved.
Yeah. It's so important, right? Because there's this tendency sometimes to think like, well, this is your problem to fix.
Right.
Or to think, oh, there's some quick, easy solution.
Yeah.
And the letter's it's just dismantling that.
Absolutely. And instead, they bring in Abdu'l Bahá's counsel, where he talks about the need for mutual endeavor, for everyone to be working together, helping each other, to develop and assist the other toward mutual advancement. So it's about this collective effort to overcome these challenges and to really create a society where love and unity can flourish. The oneness of mankind that Abdu'l Bahá talks about.
Yeah. And it's all interconnected, isn't it?
Right.
The individual transformation and the societal progress. You can't really have one without the other.
Absolutely. And then the letter just comes out and says it, It defines racism as a profound deviation from the standard of true morality.
Wow.
Yeah. That's pretty strong language, right?
It is. It's really strong language.
Yeah.
Why do you think they use such strong language?
Well, I think because it really gets to the heart of the Baha'i teachings. If we truly believe in the inherent nobility of every human being,
right,
then racism, which is denying that nobility to someone based on something as arbitrary as their race, it's just this fundamental contradiction.
Right.
And the letter goes on to talk about all the damage that racism does. Not only does it prevent individuals from reaching their full potential, but it also hinders the progress of the entire human race.
Right. So it's not just about the individuals who are targeted by racism. It's about the whole of humanity.
Absolutely. And the letter makes this point that racism cannot be rooted out by contest and conflict. It's not just about fighting against it. It's about replacing it with something better. And that something better is just relationships at every level of society, between individuals, within communities, and our institutions. It's about creating a world where everyone feels valued and respected, and where we recognize the inherent worth in every human being.
Yeah. And again, it's not just about changing laws or economic systems.
Right.
It's about this fundamental moral and spiritual transformation that has to happen within individuals and within society.
Absolutely. And so the letter goes on to talk about this distinctive Baha'i approach, like how do we approach this issue in a way that's aligned with the Baha'i teachings?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things they say is that we need to be really careful about just adopting whatever the popular opinions or ideas are, or the criticisms or the language of contemporary society.
Yeah, there's this really important caution in the letter, isn't there?
Yeah.
To not just jump on the bandwagon,
right,
but to really think deeply about these issues and to approach them from a principle standpoint.
Yeah. And to approach them in a way that is grounded in the Baha'i teachings. So it's like you're not just reacting to whatever is happening.
Right.
You're going back to these spiritual principles and saying, okay, how can these principles guide us? How can they inform the way we think about these things?
Right. And the letter really lays out a clear approach.
Yeah.
It talks about maintaining a humble posture of learning. It talks about consistently evaluating, different perspectives, different alternatives in light of the Baha'i teachings.
Right.
It talks about the importance of consultation, bringing people together to share their ideas, to harmonize their views, and to come up with unified plans of action. And then it talks about the importance of moving forward with unity, not being divided.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because, these are all elements that are already present in how Baha'is operate. It's like it's not like they're saying, okay, here's something brand new, you have to do this. It's like, no, these are things that are already embedded in the way that Baha'is try to approach challenges in the world.
Right. And the letter says something so beautiful about the power for this transformation, and it's not just political maneuvering or social pressure. It says that the ultimate power for this transformation is love originating from the relationship with the divine.
Wow.
I mean, that's a powerful statement.
Yeah. What does that make you think of?
Well, it makes me think that this kind of love, it transcends just human affection, right? It's a spiritual force, and it's a force that enables us to see the inherent worth and nobility in every human being, regardless of any any differences that we might see.
Yeah, it's like it allows you to see beyond those superficial differences.
Yeah.
And recognize that essential spiritual reality that connects us all.
Right. And the letter talks about how this love, it spreads. It starts within the Baha'i community,
Right.
and it fosters unity and understanding among the friends. And then from there, it radiates outward to touch the hearts of all humanity. It's like this chain reaction almost.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image.
Yeah. And the letter talks about how this love, it's ignited by the Word of God, and it's shared through these conversations,
Right.
Conversations that can really open people's hearts, that can make people more receptive to these moral truths and less likely to hold on to those biased ways of thinking.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because the letter talks about individuals being channels for this divine love.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's not something that just happens automatically. It's something that we have to be actively involved in.
Right.
Like we have to be willing to be those channels, to let that love flow through us and to share it with others.
Right. Yeah. And the letter concludes that section with this really powerful declaration. It says, there can be no rest until the destined outcome is achieved. So it's this sense of urgency, this unwavering commitment to working towards unity and justice.
It's not a passive thing, right?
Not at all.
It's like it's an active engagement
Right.
with this process of transformation.
Right. And then the letter, kind of shifts gears a little bit, and it offers us this really realistic perspective on the path ahead.
Right.
It acknowledges that there are going to be times of trial and promise, of hardship and progress, of anguish and joy.
Yeah. I love that part because it's so real, right? It's like it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
There are going to be ups and downs, but that's okay. Like that's part of the process.
Yeah. And the letter points to Abdu'l Bahá as this unfailing source of solace and support.
Right.
No matter what challenges we might be facing, we can always turn to him for guidance and for strength.
Mm. Yeah. And not only is he a source of solace and support, but his life is like the ultimate example, right?
Yes.
For anyone who's trying to bring about change in the world.
Absolutely. And the letter talks about his qualities, It says he was tactful, he was wise, he was penetrating in his insight, he was indiscriminating in his love, he was sympathetic, courageous, persevering, imperturbable, and just.
It's such a beautiful list of attributes.
Yeah. And it's like a blueprint for how we can approach these issues.
Absolutely. And then it ends with this really beautiful assurance from Abdu'l Bahá, where he says, that which is confirmed is the oneness of the world of humanity. Every soul who serveth this oneness will undoubtedly be assisted and confirmed.
It's a promise,
Yeah.
It's a promise that we're not alone in this.
Right.
That we have divine support.
Right.
As we work towards this goal of unity.
So to sum it all up, this letter from the Universal House of Justice, it's such a profound piece of guidance. It shows us how we can navigate these really complex social issues, particularly the issue of racial prejudice, through the lens of the Baha'i teachings.
Yeah.
It emphasizes that real change requires this deep spiritual and moral transformation within individuals,
Right.
but also unified action within communities.
Yeah.
And that the power for all of that comes from divine love.
Right.
So we really encourage you, our listeners, to think about what the oneness of humanity really means for you. How can you apply this principle in your thoughts, in your attitudes, in your actions?
Right. How can you be a channel for that divine love?
Yeah. And if you want to explore these themes further, there are so many resources out there. We definitely recommend checking out other messages from the Universal House of Justice that address social issues. And of course, going back to the writings of Bahá'u'lláh, Abdu'l Bahá, and Shoghi Effendi, and especially looking for passages that talk about the oneness of humanity, what it means in practice, how it applies to our individual lives and to the progress of society. You'll find a lot of guidance there about fostering racial unity and working for social justice.
Yeah. And as a final thought for you to ponder, we want to leave you with this question. What if we were to consistently apply these spiritual principles that we've been talking about? How would that change the world? Not just in terms of addressing outward injustices, but also in terms of creating this deep inner unity and understanding among all people. This is the kind of world that the Baha'i teachings envision. It's a world that reflects our true reality as one human family. And it's a vision that's worth striving for.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
See you next time
for another deep dive.